the crew lit. They done build with they family so they could tune in. Her we serving ice cream, you could get the scoop, man. We be whipping up, healing while we making music. Saving fuses, facing Uzis, talking to the shooters. Said they could change their lives before they split medullas. Album got her from Aruga, born dodging troopers. But this street shit, man, you cannot maneuver. And what is worse, losing your life or losing the future? And you are both, so the world and I would need you. From the blocks to the institutions feeling see-through. Cause the real can't be you, that shit is lethal. Don't let them see you bleed, boo. Shine like a star, they'll climb mountains just to reach you. Would've thought you was bilingual cause your second language is to speak truth. Broadcasting the report back, there's no fib, just all facts. Those stories that we held back, we using those for raw stats. Going off wax, my balls black, no call facts, what you call that? That short kid on the block had to have heart just to get his ball back. While he sleeps, you can hear cockbacks, it's a war zone, can't stop that. His mom told him never talk back, and you don't wanna know his pop's at.
This a report back, this a report back. Giving you all facts, but a cold smack going off wax. This a report back, this a report back. Giving you all facts, but a cold smack going off wax. This a report back, this a report back. Giving you all facts, but a cold smack going off wax. This a report back, this a report back. Giving you all facts, but a cold smack going off wax.
How could it stay quiet? We pull up causing a riot. We got that work and they buy it. If you want to say, but then pull up and try it. Money calling, I just had to go get it. I was broke, so I made a decision. Fam need me, so I can't go to prison. In these streets, I'm a man on a mission. You do not want these problems. 38, we gon' pull up and solve them. Turn your man to a target. For the chicken, he gon' be on the market. You know how this goes. Hopelessness all around in shows. That's why my heart so cold. It's only right that the chain on froze. This the report back, spin all facts. Hit a ball where the court at. You slipped up, I saw that. Nobody move, I need all that. I done came too far for me to fall back. Came too far for me to fall back, but I fall back, but I fall back.
This a report back, this a report back. Giving you all facts, but a cold smack going off wax. This a report back, this a report back. Giving you all facts, but a cold smack going off wax. This a report back, this a report back. Giving you all facts, but a cold smack going off wax. This a report back, this a report back. Giving you all facts, but a cold smack going off wax.
We create space to make space so you can have space. So you can use the space to make the case to have the space. This the time to share, this is the time to build. This the real to recognize that real is real. I was a part of the drill, moving pieces a part of the field. My block is harder to chill, when war it's on it's harder to feel. No public place for kids to play, no Black Lives Matter anyway. Politics is politics as usual anyway. Let's get back to the fact report.
Welcome everyone to our final webinar of our Lessons in Liberation series, Abolitionist Organizing and Education. My name is Woods. My pronouns are they, them, and I am a member of Critical Resistance, and I'm here to welcome you tonight. So before we begin, I'd like to take care of a few housekeeping details. Today we're gathering to celebrate the release of Lessons in Liberation, a multimedia toolkit that documents how educators, young people, organizers, and communities are building and practicing abolition in their schools and neighborhoods and communities. Next slide, please. So this toolkit is the product of years of collaboration between the Education for Liberation Network and Critical Resistance with multiple other affiliated organizations, including the ones that are currently being listed in the chat. This slide includes headshots of core members of the editorial collective, Chrissy A.Z. Hernandez, Erica Miner, Farima Pour Khorshid, Thomas Nukundiwe, Stephanie Habtam, Corey Green, Alex Davis, Safan Shak Bellevue, Emily Batista, and Emily Borg. Beyond this beautiful toolkit that we have in print, we are also still developing the accompanying Lessons in Liberation website and discussion guide, which will be coming soon. Next slide, please. Okay, so while we celebrate the release of Lessons in Liberation, we want to recognize the tremendous abolitionist work and resilience of educators during this time, educators of all kinds, classroom, para-educators, community educators, teachers, parents, members of families, people both inside and outside of prisons, community organizers, youth and neighbors who've been creating spaces for liberatory learning, even before these unprecedented circumstances. So we also want to okay, so we also want to take a little bit of time to acknowledge the stolen, occupied, unceded native land that each of us are joining this call from, and ask that you take a moment to acknowledge the indigenous name of the land you're on. I know that I'm on Lenape territory in New York. And if you don't know what indigenous land you're on, there's a phone app and website called Native Land that'll help you locate the name of the indigenous land anywhere you go, so that you can continue to show recognition and reverence to any occupied land that you are on. And so I will drop that in the chat. And then lastly, so we also know that our work must always go beyond words, and that we must act in solidarity with First Nations people who are working to protect their land and people. So in collaboration with this land acknowledgement, we also ask that you join us in committing to take action to be in solidarity with all Native people wherever you are. So we have on the slide, we also have a link to the Sogorea Land Trust, so we can support rematriation and indigenous organizing in our community locally with the donation, or we invite you to give to the Sogorea Land Trust to support their work. All right, so next slide, please. So just so you all, just to refresh, we have our Q&A function enabled in Zoom, but please note that there most likely won't be a Q&A period. Their captions are available in our Zoom webinar, or can be accessed via live stream. You can use the QR code to access captions. And so I can also drop that in the chat as well. Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. All right. Next slide, please. All right, and so now I'm gonna pass it off to our official host and moderator for the evening, Melissa Burch, who is going to introduce herself and then introduce our speakers. Thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy. Take it away, Melissa.
Thank you, Woods. My name's Melissa Burch. My pronouns are she and her. I am on land ceded by the Anishinaabe and Wyandot peoples. And I've been a part of CR in a number of different capacities over the past 18 years. Most recently, I am a member of CR's Higher Education Abolitionist Educators Working Group, and I'm a professor at the University of Michigan. And we are here today to talk about organizing against criminalization and policing, to learn from one another's successes and experiments, and to explore together how political education can be used to maximize the liberatory potential of our campaigns and projects. We will be talking broadly about campaigns and projects that are intergenerational, that engage youth and educators, that are taking place on and off campuses, inside and outside prisons, and that may include directly challenging schools, districts, municipalities, counties, or states, depending on where criminalizing policies originate. The purpose of this broad discussion is to expand the incredible classroom and school-focused trajectory of this webinar series into the scope of community-rooted grassroots organizing campaigns that engage youth and educators in creative ways and hold the liberation of young people and the empowerment of communities and youth targeted by criminalization at their core. So our plan for our time together is as follows. I'm going to begin by providing a few examples of how CR has thought about the role of education in abolitionist community organizing and how education has been integrated into campaigns and projects. Then we'll turn the conversation over to our fabulous panelists, Zachary Clarke from Black Organizing Project, Christopher Rogers from Police Free Penn, Sally Lee, Teachers Unite, and Stephen Wilson, a columnist of the Abolitionist newspaper. Stevie, as mentioned, is currently imprisoned, and so we'll do our best to give him the floor in our rotation whenever he calls in. And if we have any time left, we will open the floor for discussion between the panelists and possibly between panelists and audience. And the chat, as mentioned, will be open through the webinar for comments and questions. So teaching, learning, and processes of collective study and analysis have always been central to Critical Resistance's approach to organizing. And I'm just going to share a few examples of how we've done this over the years. I first started working with CR as an organizer for the Critical Resistance South Conference in New Orleans in the early 2000s that brought together local community leaders and people directly impacted by the PIC from 12 Southern states. And at this time, the very idea of the prison industrial complex was still new. So an essential first step was to build a common understanding with the people we were trying to organize with. We traveled around the Southern region, hosting workshops and conversations in community organizations, in churches and classrooms. And in those spaces, we began to develop educational tools and materials that could draw out the lived experiences and local knowledge of people in the room in order to build a collective analysis of what we were up against. By the time folks got to the conference, we already had this common understanding from which to strategize together about what it would take to dismantle the PIC in the South and begin to build something different. Next slide, please. From 2004 to 2010 in Los Angeles, Critical Resistance developed a political education project called LEAD, Leadership, Education, Action, and Dialogue. And we did this with a grassroots reentry organization called A New Way of Life Reentry Project. And there we organized workshops every other week on a different aspect of the prison industrial complex for small groups of women who had recently gotten out of prison. For many of the women who participated in those workshops, it was the first time they'd had an opportunity to analyze their imprisonment as something other than the result of poor choices, as they'd often been told. Through interactive exercises, reading, films, and conversation, we supported women in developing a critical analysis of what had happened to them that went beyond the personal to include an understanding of the interlocking forces and vested interests that led to their criminalization. The CRLA chapter then worked to leverage those relationships forged through political education for the purposes of organizing against police and jail expansion. From 2010 to 2015, Critical Resistance Oakland and the Stop the Injunctions Coalition fought back and won the first grassroots victory in the country against gang injunctions, a racial profiling policing tool that casts policing presence across entire neighborhoods. The Stop the Injunctions Coalition built off the campaign groundwork, research, and expertise developed by the Youth Justice Coalition in Los Angeles and by All of Us or None in San Francisco, who had been fighting gang injunctions. Through this coalitional organizing in STIC, CR Oakland partnered with multiple youth organizations to build and empower an intergenerational and youth vibrant base of resistance to gang injunctions, policing, and criminalization. We shared outreach and education materials with Chicana Moratorium Coalition, who translated them into Spanish and led a strong base building effort in the Fruitvale neighborhood of Oakland. With Chicana Moratorium Coalition leaders and other youth organizers in the city, Stop the Injunctions Coalition coordinated a week of action against the injunctions, which included over 70 Oakland classroom teach-ins on gang injunctions and a campaign to stop them, a youth concert, youth-led bike rides in the injunction zones, a vigil for young people and lives lost to violence, and a youth-led school walkout and cross-city march. CR Oakland members supported media, legislative, and outreach organizing in the campaign. And through its duration, we mobilized dozens of youth, family, and educator organizations and hundreds of community members to effectively defeat additional proposed youth criminalizing policies, such as youth curfews and anti-loitering laws that decision makers attempted to bundle in with the injunctions. During the course of that campaign, people named on the injunctions and formerly imprisoned community leaders founded a new youth-focused organization called Courage. And in addition to regular mobilizations, community events, and media organizing, CR Oakland and Courage members built and maintained a community garden in one of the gang injunction zones, which is still active as a youth and intergenerational space. CR Oakland has also supported the development and growth of Black organizing project's BOSS campaign to get police out of schools. 5 to 7 years ago, CR Oakland members were invited to facilitate our classic Abolition of Policing workshop for BOP's staff and key leaders in order to help seed a unified anti-policing politics in the organization. In the years to follow, CR Oakland also supported BOP's public campaign organizing. Members canvassed with BOP membership during Oakland teacher strikes and at events to gather signatures in support of cops out of schools from educators and families. We mobilized too and spoke at rallies demanding action from the school district decision makers to get police out of schools. And back behind the scenes, we hosted and facilitated a listening session for BOP family, youth, and educators in order to help them identify ways that police were called into school situations and to map alternative solutions. This behind the scenes political education and analysis building, as well as the outreach and mobilization, have been a powerful way for CR and BOP to organize together to support a specific youth-centered campaign goal, which we will hear more about today. In the past 2 years, CR Oakland has continued to do political education and campaigning against policing with formerly imprisoned and systems impacted youth organizations such as Courage and APAL. All of these examples illustrate CR's strategic commitment to support the development of youth and youth organizations challenging systemic criminalization, as well as organizations working for economic, political, and social empowerment of communities targeted by the PIC. Grassroots political education is part of campaign and movement building strategies to seed and grow PIC abolitionist politics and strengthen our movement. Through political education, we support the development of youth's analytical expertise and organizational political unity. This helps us to grow a stronger and more unified movement that's reflective of the many ways that the prison industrial complex impacts communities. Having done foundational political education work together, we can then better challenge systems and policies together and on our own. I would like to now bring in our panelists. And I would ask to begin that each person simply introduce yourself and your organization and describe the main focus of your organization. Zachary, if you could start.
I'm Zachary Clarke. I'm a youth organizer with the Black Organizing Project. And can you say the last question one more time, please?
Yeah, just tell us the main focus of your organization.
I was so many different things, but I think the first one to come to mind would build Black sanctuary all around. And am I passing someone or someone's going to step up?
Stevie has not joined us yet, right? So I'll pass it to Chris.
Good day, everybody. I'm Chris Rogers. I take he, him pronouns, located in Philadelphia. I'm wearing my Cops Off Campus hoodie, the Cops Off Campus Coalition. And behind me, you'll see a poster of Angela Davis and Toni Morrison, as well as the students of the Philadelphia Student Union. I'm here to represent Police Free Penn, which is an assembly of undergraduate students, graduate students, tenured and untenured faculty, staff and alumni at the University of Pennsylvania. And our goal is to abolish policing and transform community safety in and beyond the University of Pennsylvania, which necessarily includes being in coalition, being in solidarity with wider local, regional, national, and global organizing. And with that, we follow the leadership of the Black Philly Radical Collective, a multi-generational coalition of Black radical organizing in Philadelphia, which our mission sort of dovetails with their demands and their vision. So happy to be here with y'all.
Thanks, Chris. Sally?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sally Lee. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the director of Teachers Unite. We are an independent membership organization of New York City public school educators, K through 12 educators, organizing to dismantle the school to prison pipeline, focusing on schools, the school system here in New York City.
Wonderful. So now I'm just going to ask each of you to say a little bit more. Tell us about the work that you're doing to challenge criminalization. Explain to us what the target or the goal is and some of the strategies that you're using to work toward those goals.
Oh, yeah. I work in the youth. I work with the youth. That's basically my whole ideal. Like my day-to-day is basically working with the youth. And we just had this really big blessing of a win of the George Floyd resolution. And within that win, we defunded the police out of the schools in OUSD. And we were one of the first to, get that job done. But Bob looks at that as, just an enlightenment or a highlight of some win, but we still understand that there's so much more work to do and so much work to be done within the communities and all over the United States as well. And I think some of the main things that we're actually doing right now, and some of the things that we did in the past, has just been truly, truly found grassroots organizing. Really being in the community, really being inside these classrooms and schools, trying to instill with these times of our pandemic and us having to be in this virtual aspect, we're still in the same gist of things, still being connected with the community fully. And I think that's been like our main focus, and informing the community as well as the win, and what's going to happen next with everything. What's going to be the next thing that's going to be key after getting the police out of the school system? How are we going to get more stronger within our culture keepers? Are we going to pay them a civil, salary so they can feel welcomed in these school places and understanding these school places other than looking at it as a paycheck and just watching children? We want something a little bit more tighter in the school zone. So I think that's definitely some of the main focus.
Thank you. Chris, do you want to go next?
Yes. So Police Free Penn began in June 2020, really responding to a horrific incident upon which the University of Pennsylvania Police, which is the largest private police force in Pennsylvania, the third largest in the country, was sent to support and defend a police assault led by the Philadelphia Police Department on the 52nd Street community, which is like the Black main business district hub, but it's also like a residential area. They were shot, community members were shot with rubber bullets, houses and families were tear gassed. And finding out that our university was there, it really called us into a responsibility to think about the interconnections between the university and and policing in Philadelphia. But really, as we got deeper into it, we recognized how global it truly is. So we started with a petition around 12,000 signatures, and really, began to sort of look at the ways that university supports and funds policing in Philadelphia. The director of Penn's public safety is a veteran of the Philadelphia Police Department and also the director of the Philadelphia Police Foundation, who championed being able to use the auspices of the university to raise money to fund SWAT weapons for the police force. Then we also learned about the research and work of Richard Burch. Richard Burch designed risk assessment algorithms that have now been sold to police forces and parole boards and all across this country, which determine based on racist redlining neighborhood data who gets to go free, right? And sort of like helps to prop up this cash bail or ransom regime. We learned about the research of Albert Kligman, who led the Penn prison experiments in Holmesburg Prison, which used toxic chemicals on imprisoned men who had who did not have a full understanding of what was being used to develop skincare protocols, and that the profits from that, of which Johnson & Johnson and of course the Penn dermatology department share, used to sort of like build up Penn medicine. We learned about the institutional violence and the continual extraction and exploitation of the community led by Penn Museum. The Penn Museum, which is, one might say, like where the trophies of colonial extraction are held, was also in possession of the remains of children from the bombing of the MOVE organization by the city of Philadelphia in 1985. The remains of Tree and Delisha Africa were found at the museum and being used to teach classes. We develop a campaign to talk about what reparations and accountability looks like around that violence. And most recently, we've begun a mutual aid initiative to really think about the power of really reaching beyond what we might know to be campus-based organizing, to think about the resources that we have can be leveraged into our local communities. And we're proud to do that. And our first partner is the Freedom Side School, which is an abolitionist elementary school that is coming into its vision and practice here in Philadelphia, led by veteran abolitionist organizers affiliated with CADB, the Coalition Against Death by Incarceration, and the Human Rights Coalition. So that's just a little bit about our campaigns and our work, and I hope that adds a little bit more to the picture.
Again, I'm Sally, and I can talk a little bit about Teachers Unite. We've been working in coalition for about 10 years with organizations of young people, led by young people, parents, as well as advocacy organizations in the New York chapter of the National Dignity in Schools campaign. The coalition is working to end punitive and policing practices that push students of color, Black and brown students, out of school and into the prison system. Currently, where Teachers Unite is building on our collective wins, the shifts that we've managed to make happen in New York, and also reflecting on the setbacks we've had in New York in fighting for police-free schools here. Where Teachers Unite is focusing on a campaign to get New York to transform its school budgeting and staffing away from policing and towards new safety positions where safety is defined by school communities. So right now there's a $500 million school safety budget, which is funneled to the NYPD to staff our over 1,000 schools that are in our district with school safety agents, SSAs, who are supervised by NYPD. And our ideas about safety actually take cue from critical resistance. If you go to our principles of unity, we actually cite a critical resistance in saying that we challenge the belief that caging and controlling people makes us safe. And from that, our members, working public school educators, have been building restorative justice programs and practices in their schools, as well as advocating alongside organizations, our coalition. So if our campaign, our current campaign that we are in the process of building and starting up now, if we win, over 1,000 schools in our system will provide job opportunities to Black and Brown community members who want to work in schools, but without higher degrees are shut out of employment in schools unless they work for NYPD as school safety agents. It's one of the few stable unionized positions in schools that doesn't require higher ed. And it often ends up being a starting place for a career trajectory within NYPD, as opposed to career trajectories where we want to see Black and Brown community members entering into teaching careers, guidance careers, social work careers, well-paying positions that help nurture or educate our communities. So our organization is working to organize in schools to build models to show the city this is how we can create a different kind of safety position outside of a policing structure.
Thanks, everyone. I'd like to have Stephen introduce himself if we can play that recording, if he is not here yet.
He's actually on the line. Stevie, can you say something?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, they can hear you.
Okay, well, I don't know how long I'll be able to be on the line, but this is Stevie Wilson. I'm calling from a prison in central Pennsylvania. I facilitate a number of study groups behind the walls. I also edit the journal, the Abolitionist journal, In the Belly. And so we do a lot of political education. That's what we're about. My largest study group is 9971, an abolitionist study group. We also have a book club, and we also have a career abolitionist group called SAS, and transformative justice healing circle called Circle Up. So we do a couple different things going on in Pennsylvania behind the walls, and basically it's all centered around political education. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Yes. Hi, we hear you.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Stevie. Yep.
I said before, I don't know how long I'll be able to stay on the line because we're actually about to, I'm in Pennsylvania and we're about to go down shortly. But I really wanted to just thank Molly for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. Reminded of what Angela Davis talked about, freedom is a constant struggle, about making sure incarcerated voices are heard and are part of these conversations. And so I thank Molly and everyone at the Abolitionist CR for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. I wanted to pose a question to the other panelists, and maybe they can get this answer to me, but it was about political education and what you're doing right now to connect with the masses, right?
This is a call from
well.
Pennsylvania State Correctional Institution, Camp Hill. This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
The question is about what you're doing right now around political education, what you're doing to connect with the masses so we can broaden the movement, what's working well, and what areas you think we could do better in. I'm really interested in an answer because the work we do behind the walls here, I'm always looking for ways to broaden the movement and connect people. And even though we're in prison, I think it might be easier to convince people in prison about abolition. It still work. It really is work. And they look at me like I'm crazy sometimes when I say world without prison. So I'm really interested in what you're doing and all the projects that I know about the projects that you are involved in. And I'm really interested in the work you're doing. And like I said, my solidarity. But I'm very interested in ways that you found ways to connect with a larger audience, right? A broader audience. What's working well in some other areas you think that we could actually do better in? If you could get those, you could answer that question for me and maybe to get the answers to me, I would really appreciate it. We will appreciate it here. Once again, I know we're about to go down here. I just wanted to put that question out there, and I thank you, Molly, once again, everyone there, for allowing me to call in and pose this question. I know there's a recording there. If anyone has any other questions for me, the way to get in touch with me, you can write to me, you can do email.
This is a call from Pennsylvania State Correctional Institution, Camp Hill. This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
Everyone have a great day. We're going down now. All right?
Thank you, Stevie, and thank you for the question.
All right, y'all.
Should we respond now, Melissa? Is that okay?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yes, thank you, Stevie, for the question. I think for us, we have one, of course, as Stevie does so well, recognize the power of study groups and building, finding works such as, Mariam Kaba's latest work, the collection that was just released through by Colin Kaepernick, and the Abolition Journal and other texts, and using those to really build communities that are centering on these questions of how do we become abolitionists, as Derica Purnell talks about. But the one thing that we have learned in our political education work is about challenging that can be something that is academic, right? That there is sort of like practices and direct action and campaign work and being in community that needs to happen alongside those sorts of what we may determine to be political education. So how do we think of like our campaigns? Right now we're engaged in a campaign to defend the University City Townhomes, a low-income housing project that's about 2 blocks from the main center of campus, and which has been threatened by sort of like, the windfall of these knowledge economy, healthcare, bio, life sciences, innovation ideas. So how can we really get on the ground and see this campaign as a practice space for us to practice an abolitionist politic? And I think that has been the greatest way we have seen development amongst ourselves and bringing in people into the movement and recognizing that they don't always have to come, you don't have to come in to this work with a full sort of like, I am an abolitionist, but recognizing that through these concrete steps, we create the conditions towards a more abolitionist world. So how do we, one, create those study spaces, but also create those spaces of practice? And what are those campaigns that we come together around to be able to do that work? And that's just a little bit of an answer.
Okay,
Or response.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Stevie, for the question. And I'll just jump right into it about the political education. Now that we're in this new virtual world, that's been like some of our main, that's been like the meat of our new supporters, new youth, new members, new people that just want to support the organization itself, is political education. So we've really been gathering up people and like showing different films that we can get like documentation of different things that happen in Oakland, different things that happen in Philadelphia, information that, a lot of the people in our community are not, that just don't know of. So we're like putting that on blast. We're having different Zoom meetings where we're able to, speak about these political things that's happening, things that happened in the past, and some ideals of what can happen in the future. So we really try to lay that ground as if we were in person now that we're in virtually. So that's our political education, and as well as expands to our book club. So we have like this book club, and it's not just focused on different books they read, but they're generally doing some type of research of finding educational facts that we can bring towards the whole organization. That's the book club itself is thinking of new things to bring towards the organization far as political education. And they're the ones that's actually weekly meeting up and having different books and different chapters that they're going over, and they're bringing that information to the bigger group with our supporters and, like I said, our newer folks that's trying to get engaged with the Black Organizing Project. And it's been really, really solid from there. We've been a lot of engagement from doing these things. And I think the last thing we said, what's been working. I think what I want to say, I want to read it. I'm sorry. What can we do better in? I think we can do better in just being as powerful as we were in person, as in virtually. I think that's something that we all can work on, and I think that once we're equipped on both sides, I think that just can make things better for all of us. That's all I have.
Yeah. Also, thank you for the question. And I was thinking about how teachers come to Teachers Unite. They tend, if they don't already identify as abolitionists, then they're curious about restorative justice. They, maybe know about the school to prison pipeline. And I think we really rely not only on peer-to-peer education in our cohort meetups of educators coming together across boroughs, to talk about this work and to frame it in the history and context of dismantling the school to prison pipeline and advocacy, but also rely on our partners in coalition, our youth partner. There is no end to the resources. You could just go to Dignity in Schools campaign website, and there's just so much education, so many statistics about criminalization of young people. And that is how we frame this work. Because what has happened, particularly in New York, and I think in other places as well, restorative justice and that idea has been very co-opted. And so we even launched, and we're about to release our participatory action research findings around how do teachers, parents, educators, and young people define safety and accountability in schools, and what are the definitions of what it means to have a school that's embracing restorative justice as a way just to push back on the co-opting sort of mainstream narrative that we see in the news, where folks are like, oh, how is restorative justice going to help when students are stabbing each other in this school? We need to be able to talk about how is everyone, what is safety, and what are other ways to talk and think about safety that doesn't involve just metal detectors and this constant fear of violent crimes. Another thing that we have been struggling with, our coalition in New York, is this narrative around defunding the police, right? And the folks who say, how can you take away the police? How can you say get rid of school safety agents? These are Black women from our communities. Are you saying just X out their, nix their jobs and that's that? And so we've had to really think about, of course, that is not what we are saying. What is this nuanced approach? How do we organize with school safety agents so that they can speak their truth about why they want to be working in school and what safety means to them and the limited possibilities they have to work in a school? And what it means to work for NYPD versus working for the Department of Education. How can we talk about our vision of police-free schools in a way that taps into exciting ideas like jobs creation? So we actually have a goal in the next few years of our strategic plan, to really look at how can we be monitoring the press pieces that come out about our issues and see how the conversation is changing. Because you know what it is right now. It's the same everywhere. There's a lot of fear in response to the idea of saying we need to defund the police. And that's very entrenched in New York.
Can I add to that, Melissa? Thank you for that, Susan, because one of the things about that narrative of defunding the police, one of the things that we are going through in Philadelphia this year is a huge uptick in gun violence. We're probably going to see a record number of murders within the city. We spend $750 million as a city on policing. This does not take into account the other budgets, like for example, universities. University of Pennsylvania spends about $30 million. We also have like Temple University, it also has like $1 million police budget. You can think about the Housing Authority, you can think about SEPTA, and there's so many other sort of like para police units that are being, created throughout the city. And this has not, created safety in our communities. So when one of the narrative, shifts we have tried to talk about is the failure of policing, and that we are not sometimes, beginning in 2020, we can talk about the persistence of police violence, but we also can talk about that policing itself is violence. So when we look at, for example, my university banked $5.6 billion into its endowment over the life of the pandemic. Those are $5.6 billion that are not going to invest in community resources, that are not going to ensure that our communities are like being cared for, even in the midst of this pandemic. We're seeing the upward redistribution of wealth and it being protected by policing. So I think that's one way in which we sort of have tried to challenge the narrative, right, of how people think what we mean of defunding the police, and looking at the interconnections between, the upward redistribution of wealth and how that is made to seem status quo or made to seem legitimate. It's not seen as a crime by this regime of policing, which says, people are in jail because of their bad behavior, or that the harm is created in communities by these individual, evil choices or whatever. So I just wanted to add that into this, conversation about defunding the police, because it is a narrative challenge that we are having, with our communities.
Thanks so much, everyone. I'm learning that we have a recording of Stevie talking a little bit about how they are using political education inside. And so maybe it would be nice to hear that clip.
Oh yeah, well, actually 997 is our largest abolitionist group. It's our largest study group. And what we tend to do is the entry for many people into abolition. We talk about policing and safety. We start with definitions most of the time. We talk about policing and safety and community and things like that. And I know that for myself and for people here, this studying is healing. It's healing work, because oftentimes we went through so much and we're trying to figure out what happened and why it happened, what we can do to make sure it doesn't happen again. And studying helps us get those answers. So I want people to understand it's not just about people knowing what's happening out in the world, but actually this work heals us. Those of us who's out of here, we need answers. We need answers. Something horrible has happened to us, and through study, through political education, we find out what happened and we find out ways to make sure it doesn't happen again. So it's also healing for us. healing. Right now we're actually working on some labor issues. We're working on trying to this zine for Golden Gulag. We're trying to get together and working on racial capitalism. We're trying to make connections between capitalism and our conditions and the conditions of our neighborhoods, because too often people inside don't make that connection. They have no problem with capitalism. They don't see the role that capitalism plays in the PIC. They don't see why their neighborhoods, their schools look like that, why the safety net has been taken away from us, the social safety net has been taken away from us. They don't understand it. They don't see how capitalism plays a role in that. I actually have people inside who are walking around talking about Black capitalism. I'm just totally vexed by this. Like, Black capitalism? This is like really an oxymoron here. Because in my world, capitalism is anti-Black, so I don't understand what Black capitalism is. But this is what we're going through here right now. So we're trying to actually make the connection between capitalism and the conditions of suffering that people are doing every single day. We're also talking about labor behind the walls. And we're working on a couple of zines, particularly we're talking about the Golden Gulag zine right now. So that's what we're doing in 9971, and hopefully you'll see our zine soon, and you'll see the work that we're doing, and then help continue to support us in that work.
Thank you, Stevie. That was great. All of you have talked a little bit about successes and challenges already, but I just wanted to create a little more space to dig a little deeper into successes and challenges. And in particular, part of what we're trying to talk about tonight is organizing generationally and across boundaries of campus and community. And so we'd love to hear any reflections that any of the panelists have about successes and challenges and just lessons. What have you learned in trying to organize across those boundaries around these issues?
Yeah, I would just start with some of the lessons that we're actually learning, that we're still fighting fully. We're still implementing things. We're still trying to push through with the district. Just like mental health, culture keepers being, set in stone. This is a new label. This should be looked at as a new way of how the school is going to look, not just a new position. These should be laced all the way down. So these insights that we're getting within the schools, we're still implementing. They're still trying to bring police within the school from different programs after the win. These things are still happening, and they're given extensions of police mentorship in our schools after the win just happened. These things are happening as we speak, as we're still working, and we're still going to keep it going. It's no end to it, and but I definitely would feel like that's one of the lessons that's taken a toll as right now within the community, because these things are actually happening, and they gave us this gracious win, and it just didn't stand stone like it was supposed to. And then I definitely want to speak on the importance of political education, and I think some of our main focuses are going to have to be informing about the things that BOP has done and what we're looking forward to doing. But I think it's going to be tough. But the route that we're really trying to go is keep on going with these listening sessions, having district members, community members, teachers, admin, students, parents in one room and understanding what's the right thing to do from the policies that's already been passed and what's going to happen now. You guys are putting it in our face. We're understanding what's going on with the school board and how you guys are actually feeling about the students. And we need to make a difference now. And we understand that that win was not the end of all. That was just a stepping stone. Thank you.
I can answer that. And I was also gonna answer a question that came through the Q&A about how do you deal with the tensions when folks from communities are asking for more police in schools. And I think what we're able to do is refer right back to our member. I haven't been in myself, I haven't been in a classroom, I haven't taught in almost 20 years. Our members are current teachers who work in schools from the Bronx to Brooklyn, some heavily policed and have scanners and, metal detectors every day. Some, take a very different approach and very much embrace restorative justice, from the administration to the students. And it's those folks who were able to, who are, when they're the spokespeople, when our members who are teachers, who are in schools every day, say, my students feel like criminals coming into school because of metal detectors. These are the ways police come in and escalate conflict. This is the way my teaching is interrupted by police. Just to have those real voices and real stories is the way that we can start to talk about that. The other way is our participatory action research project, which is, again, the voices of students, parents, and educators really talking about how they've been building safety in their schools without policing. It's there's always these extreme cases to talk about and to contend with. And so we just try to draw the conversation back. I think, as Chris was pointing out, is policing working? And looking at all the ways it's not working, and looking at ways, can we define safety as well-funded schools? Can we define violence as defunding schools? Again, referring to, things that Chris was pointing out. As far as intergenerational organizing, I'll just try to say quick that while our members do lead some, maybe peer mediation programs or restorative justice circle programs in their schools with students, with their own students, that organizing outside of their job and with Teachers Unite and with our coalition partners gives them an opportunity to organize with young people in a principled way. Because there's some questionable ethics when teachers are organizing their own students and saying, come to this protest and you got to believe this. There are power dynamics at play. They're the teacher. I'll give you more credit if you come to this action, right? It's also a way that teachers can jeopardize their job is by getting, and we want our members to stay. We need more folks like our members to stay in New York City schools. And so our members find that it is a relief to be accountable to organizations led by youth, organizations that we've been in struggle with. It helps us to gain trust from those organizations. It allows for a two-way education, back and forth of all of our members around these principles. And so I'll stop there and say that is one of the ways that I think there's so much focus sometimes on youth organizing that we have gotten sort of the question of why are you organizing teachers? And I can talk more about that. There's definitely a reason to, but how we address what our relationship is to young people organizing, I think, has to be thoughtful. And it can't only just be about, what the teachers are saying to the students in their class, as if that's how our members teach. They don't teach like that, but you know what I mean? Like there needs to be a real acknowledgement of the power dynamics.
Thanks a lot, Sally. I took that in.
Oh, thanks, Zach, too. Yes, Susan, also in another role, I am also on the National Steering Committee for Black Lives Matter at School. So I think about the critical importance of organizing educators to be in solidarity with, local community organizing. And, we'll jam on that at another time. But within the police-free Penn work, oh, yeah, sorry, Sally, I got it. And in the police-free Penn work, I think one of the things that we realized early is that the university depends on a sense of amnesia amongst the student body, for real. Like, students come through, you graduate 4 years, you leave, you move on. And there's always this gap of how do you recover the momentum of movement, of demands, of, campaigns. and the ways in which like the university has really built itself to protect against that, right? And there's a long history of that, and seeing the sort of shift of our universities to becoming, little fortresses, and you have to have a card to get into places, and just creating that gap between the community and who is a student, so much so that the conversation of policing at Penn becomes more about how a Black student at Penn, right, is treated, right? And they're the example, the narrative that the university rolls out, rather than thinking that with the largest private police force, which takes up, the university is on like 34th, 30 to 37th Street. They push out, security officers all the way up to about 48th to 50th Street. That connection of seeing how are police interfacing with the community. The University of Pennsylvania police are deputized by the state of Pennsylvania, and according to Marine Rush, have the right to go anywhere they want and just bring people to the local jail. So it's important for us to remember that the university also sees this as like not just campus community, but those two things move together. So we need to be thinking about that the same. So, and I think our first thing was recognizing that there are communities of radical organizers that are grounded deeply in Philadelphia. And what is our responsibility, right? To follow in the vision and line that they have set. And me personally being someone who's also from around this way, and runs a couple spaces locally. It's about how do we create those bridge spaces, right? How do we create a set of demands that are not just about reinforcing, who is to be on campus, but reinforcing that like we are all human, we all have dignity, and we don't need to be searched and arrested or stopped as we move through space. So I think creating those sorts of bridge spaces in which we do, and I think the mutual aid initiative is really starting to dig deeper into, is about how are we leveraging the resources that we have as this like elite Ivy League institution and seeding those into institution building and local community organizing that is taking place with some of our like dedicated abolitionist organizations, like the Human Rights Coalition, like CADB, like Decarcerate PA. So I think that has been something that we have constantly thought about. And I think another thing has also been challenging the hierarchies that come in university spaces. We may be one of the only, campus abolitionist groups who, it's an assembly. We are trying to reject the silos of undergraduate students or graduate students or faculty or staff, but recognize that we all have crucial information and crucial leverage to be able to move forward, campaigns, to be able to hold folks accountable, to be able to dig through information, to gather resources. So we think about those sorts of connections and, how to mobilize ourselves in community for real. So we recognize that we exist in an ecosystem, and it's not just about what we can do ourselves, but our role in supporting that ecosystem.
I think we have one more comment from Stevie that connects to what both Chris and Sally were just talking about. So we're going to play that next.
Well, I'm gonna tell you something. I always say this, and I'm going back to Martin Salisbury. Listen, this movement, right? The youth are very important. Without the youth, we're not going to win. And I find this also inside the prisons a lot of times that people don't want to spend time talking to the youth. They don't want to spend time connecting with the youth, but we need to. We need to. We need to find ways also, this is why we turn back to cultural production, trying to find ways to bring the youth into the movement because they have the energy. They have the energy. So it's really important that we actually focus on youth and developing them and do political education with them, because they really, really have it. They are the ones who make this happen. I tell people inside all the time, I said Fred Hampton was 21 when they murdered him. I want them to understand that, the Black Panthers was was created by 21 and 22-year-olds. You know what I mean? I want people to understand that they weren't old people that created these movements. They were young people. Martin Luther King Jr. was 26 on the Montgomery bus boycott. You understand what I'm saying? Malcolm was young. I want people to understand we're young people who are actually a part of these, who actually started these movements or leading these movements. So we need to return to that, you know, and harness that energy. I want to say particularly people at University of Pennsylvania. I don't know if they know this, but I'm an alumnus of University of Pennsylvania, so I'm very happy that I see people working to kick the cops off of the campus at University of Pennsylvania. It's very important because oftentimes those police officers at the University of Pennsylvania, they terrorize the young people who actually live around the University of Pennsylvania. All right, those who live in West Philly, they constantly harass them when they come onto the campus or come in first with the campus. So it's important to me, being a Philadelphian, that that campaign is really important to me. And I'm with sending them strength and solidarity. We need to get all the cops off these campuses, universities and schools. So, and big ups to Oakland and what they were able to achieve out there, getting the cops out of the schools. And we can replicate that all over the country. Really, the people, you know how serious this is. So I'm just grateful for all the work. I'm aware of it. And I'm sending you my solidarity, and I'm with you in struggle. Listen, I'm just so, I said earlier, like I said, I just can't believe I'm writing a column for the Abolition. And this is how I got into, you know, abolition, you know what I mean? So it's just like, this is amazing. It's an opportunity to pay it forward, and I'm just grateful for that opportunity and all the work that you do. Rory, all the work you're doing, everyone involved in the collective, the editorial collective, everyone is involved with the Abolitionists. I'm appreciative of everything that you're doing. And like I said, the Abolitionist is one of the consistent print publications that get behind the walls. And we don't have many, and we need more. But this is one that's consistently coming behind the walls and helping us to educate and hold these circles and to learn. So I'm thankful and grateful. And I'm really honored to be a part of the process.
I'd like to have us build a little bit on what Stevie just contributed in terms of the importance of focusing on young people. Can we just dwell there for a moment? And yeah, I mean, why does a focus on young people matter to the broader movement to fight the prison industrial complex? And kind of how do you see a focus on young people as part of that larger and longer term effort to fight policing and criminalization of communities? And Sally, would love to hear you say more about why focus on teachers also within that question. Who might like to start?
Well, I can even respond because I was actually thinking about the importance of focusing on young people. I mean, it just seems obvious to me when it comes to fighting criminalization in the prison industrial complex, but even more so, almost from the angle of transforming our schools and public education and focusing on young people. You know, our members are part of one of the most powerful unions in the country, the UFT, United Federation of Teachers, which effectively controls the American Federation of Teachers, the National Teachers Union. And it's really, I believe, our members' responsibility to try to push that organization that is accountable to our members on behalf of their students and on behalf of the demands that young people and parents and our members have been struggling for in terms of dismantling the school to prison pipeline. The union has a enormous outsized power in shaping education policy, and it sits with the cops, the NYPD in New York, on the municipal labor union council. So they're friends. And it's up to our members to push and push and push this very powerful organization to take a stand and we were able to move them away from saying the union used to say we want more suspensions, right? Which is this, we want that tool available to us to suspend kids, and then more and more research was coming out about the impact of relying on suspensions in pushing Black and Latinx, particularly students in New York City, towards the prison industrial complex. And they stopped saying that. They stopped talking about that, because there was a vocal minority of educators saying, no, we want to end the policy and practice of suspending on something as vague as defying authority, which was in the discipline code, And so it's a long road to travel. But anyway, the particular role of teachers, I obviously think about a lot, and I think about it in terms of being accomplices, with young people in this fight against the institutions that are criminalizing them. And there are a few institutions. There's the Department of Ed working with the NYPD, and unfortunately also the Educators Union is in concert, in shaping how these policies impact our young people.
I'm gonna jump in here because I know Zach's going to bring us home talking about the work with youth. But I think what's important for me is to realize that, Paul Robeson and the saying that like what the youth inherit is the struggle, is the beautiful struggle. And Angela Davis has this quote about like young people standing on the shoulder of giants, right? In terms of studying the history of folks who have, crafted and led our movements for, freedom and justice. But also on those shoulders, they can see things that we might not be able to see. So with that, I think it's important that we institutionalize, right? And our sort of like community way spaces where young people come into understanding and an awareness of tools to organize, practice leading campaigns. I'm proud to serve on the advisory board of the Philadelphia Student Union. I hope to be like a comrade to the Black Organizing Project through the Alliance for Educational Justice here in Philadelphia. And their work, they led our police-free schools work here in the city of Philadelphia. And these are young people who are like leading the narrative work at the school board meetings, leading the campaigns. And in many ways, as Sally just mentioned, pushing our educators to recognize the critical importance of what police-free schools are. And we still have a ways to go, on that work here in Philadelphia. But having that space, the Philadelphia Student Union, whose offices right now are right next to Malcolm X Park. Malcolm X Park, which was, reclaimed in the late 80s from Black Oak Park, turned into Malcolm X Park to recognize the legacy of Black radical history here in the city of Philadelphia. That space, which not only serves for the young people to be there and organize their campaigns, but also is a hub for where many different organizations and collectives come to host press conferences and lead conversations and host political education work. The importance of, creating and sustaining these spaces is so important. And I'm thinking of this most important because we just came off of Giving Tuesday and we're leading this campaign about ensuring that we continue to have the space for young people to learn the tools of abolitionist organizing and get out there and practice that work. Just wanted to shout that out. But I'm here, I'm ready for Zach.
All right, thanks, Clarke. I think the first thing I just want to inform, I just want to state it out, like, when you're with the youth and you're giving them those stories of the Black Panthers being, 16, 17 years old, going to the same high school that you guys are going to, fighting the same fight at that time of going to the same high schools and in the same way that they're always been to them. There's cops there. It's so dysfunctional. The community is upside down, and the leaders were the youth. And when you get to tell another person that lives in that same community, and you give them the logistics of what happened, how these things went down, and you let them know that they're the future, and you inform that to them, and you install that within the day-to-day what we do within an organization, That's what's key. When the youth understand that they're the edge of that sword, the bow to that arrow, it's never an ending thing in the youth. It starts from the babies, just having babies around. I think when we have some of the parents and some of the meetings and they have their children yelling in the background, crying in the background, just having that momentum in the space itself from the youth, it's a magical thing because we understand where we came from. And when, having your children and making sure they're okay, that was sometimes out of sight, out of mind. Most of the people in these communities are just going to school just to go. But if it's a time now that we can actually collective be together amongst and understand that the youth are the future, and they know that they're the future, that's how things have been moving forward. And I just appreciate Steve for bringing that up about the youth. And thank you.
So we only have a few minutes left. I thought it might be good for us to just talk about deepening the work in 2022 and also beyond, what opportunities you see, sort of reflecting on where you are now and where you might like to be. You can take the question however you like, in a year, in 5 years, in your wildest dreams, however you want to answer.
I'll start and offer our, most current or campaign is around defending the families of the University City townhomes. I'll put the link to the petition in the chat. And then other than that, like our depth of relationship is growing with the Freedom Side School. And I'll put the information about them in the chat as well. Because I think one of the things that we are seeing on the horizon for 2022 is moving from a space of mobilizing into a space of organizing, moving from a space of reacting to a space of building proactive organizations and collectives that are seeding the types of abolitionist institutions and practices that we like to build. So I'm really excited about that work as we get to it in 2022, and thinking about how that, brings us to deepen relationships alongside the many, sort of like beautiful initiatives that are taking place in the city of Philadelphia. So we're proud to be one in the number of that community. And we're going to continue to be out there and continue to do this work from the space of University of Pennsylvania, and talk about what it means to build an accountable sort of like university to the community. Thank you.
Where we want to be in 5 years, 3 years, 5 years is, like I said, that right now, there are schools that have given up having substitutes for the year in order to piece together funding for a restorative justice coordinator. There are schools that are making sacrifices by hook or by crook because they need capacity for somebody to help just do the community building work that creates truly safe schools. We want to see in 3 to 5 years in New York City where every school has the time, space, and an actual staff position in terms of capacity dedicated to that work. And that's what we're working on. And we want the funding from that to come out of the school police budget.
5 years from now, I would definitely, one of the main captures I'm going to state, 5 years now, I want us to start where we were at 10 years ago. We were in the meat of everything. When we had no clue, and people were really stating, Bob, you guys are too radical. It's no way this is going to happen. This is not real. What are you guys standing for? We need police. We need to get the community back together fully and understanding what we need to do next after the win. and informing what they're trying to do within those school zones. In the next 5 years, it should be Black sanctuary in every school in OUSD. It should be no doubt about it. Black sanctuary should be on the title of when you're walking inside the schools. That's how mainstream this should be. And that's the motion of it. These schools should be more of a safe haven fully. Thank you.
Do any of our panelists have another final word they would like to share before I close this out?
Thanks for having me. This is amazing. I think we were at the peak of like 120. That was like the most people I ever spoke to in a panel. So I was pretty, it was a little up tempo, but I really have Chris and Sally. I really appreciate you guys. It's great talents with me, and I can't wait to do this again. I appreciate you, all you guys. Thank you.
Yes, that was beautiful. Thanks, Zach. And I just want to shout out the work of, Critical Resistance, AK Press and Education for Liberation Network, in particular, Critical Resistance. There was that pamphlet that was put out about what you can do at your university to build towards the Bill Abolitionist sort of like organizing. And that template was something that we used a lot in terms of how to found like the founding constitution of the work that we do. So I'm, incredibly thankful. Yes.
I have no idea how many people were tuning into this, and I'm glad because I'd get really shy and nervous. So I'm glad I didn't even hear what number you just said, Zachary. But Critical Resistance has been quite an inspiration for me and for our organization for many years. It's a real honor to have been on this panel with all of you. Thank you.
I have to say thank you, Critical Resistance. I'm so sorry that I didn't even say that. Everybody said it and I didn't. So thank you guys as well.
Thank you, everyone. This has been amazing. Appreciate all of you.
I need to know that my voice is not screaming for help under a flooded society, that it is being heard, not just to be heard, but to be taken seriously. I need wealthy policymakers to stop putting my future up for profit. I need to know that the beautiful scenes I am privileged to witness can be admired by my grandchildren and future generations to come. I need them to stop because we sure as hell won't. La naturaleza es belleza. Entonces deja que se quede así. Because to protect her is to protect us. I just need a livable future. Is that too much to ask?
Let them know they can't throw us away, no. Let them know they can't throw us away, no. Let them know they can't throw us away, hey. No one is disposable. Let them know they can't throw us away, no. Let them know they can't throw us away, no. Let them know they can't throw us away, hey. No one is disposable.
COVID and climate change ain't far from the same. People in the margins disrespected and blamed. They put oil and gas infrastructures where we play, contaminate the lands, air, and the rain. Our health in a game, our lungs are inflamed. Stuck in a cage with a severe corona case. Displaced by the climate while they profit from our pain. But I don't see them treating their children the same way. Hey, they try to bury me, but don't know I'm a seed. We are seeds existing, flourishing with no ID. No one is disposable. We are capable, rooted like a vegetable, and taking back the time to give it to my people. Want everything equal, no government's free throw. We know how to water the roots. Need no politician telling us how to do it. Need no politician telling us how to
Let
do
them know they
it.
can't throw us away, no. Let them know they can't throw us away, no. Let them know they can't throw us away, ay. No one is disposable. Let them know they can't throw us away, no. Let them know they can't throw us away, no. Let them know they can't throw us away, ay.
Don't they know?
No one is disposable.
Tried to bury us, didn't know we were seeds. Frighten us, expecting us to retreat, recede, fall back. Shut up, sit down. We rooted here in breaking ground. Concrete roses and dandelions. Come summertime, we fly the wind with wishes of our family riding, rising high, carry them up to God's ears. Divine beings, we know that God hears. See the system writhing, crying, fighting for its last dying breath. It rather pillage till it's nothing left, and paradigm shift to the left. Like sharing wealth will be the kiss of death. Well, I got a news flash for you folks. Our youth are ravenous savages, and they ain't gonna take no more. So kiss your billions to sleep tonight, cause come morning time, we gon' retrieve our birthright.
Let them know they can't throw us away, no. Let them know they can't throw us away, no. Let them know they can't throw us away, ay. No one is disposable. Let them know they can't throw us away, no. Let them know they can't throw us away, no. Let them know they can't throw us away, ay. No one is disposable.
Burning bright with hope and love. Sexism, racism they throw at us. You can throw us into dirt and darkness, but just like a plant, we grow through the soil and towards the light. Controlling us as if we are property. Though they try to change us, we are unbreakable. You have forgotten what happens when we unite. Together we are strongest and we will fight. We need a livable future and not just for the wealthy. They look at us with greed-filled eyes, afraid of our strength. The toxic pollution you dump into the air is like poison and makes us all unhealthy. I'm fighting for my sisters and brothers in Mother Earth. I'm sorry that you have forgotten her worth. It depends on our people understanding how important our voices and thoughts are. Because unlike before, we refuse to be silenced. I'm fighting for a world where people will be prioritized over profit. A world where we no longer have to fear poverty, immigration, white supremacy, racism, sexism, homophobia, and other truly ugly things in this truly beautiful world. I stand with those who continue to be systematically silenced and whose presence seems to be dismissed. For those who have been here for centuries long before us and continue to be exploited and misrepresented. I stand with the indigenous leaders who are filled with knowledge but are constantly mistakenly spoken for.